Hey, I'm Raymond from the Beginner Photography Podcast, and today we're going to get sensitive. Let's get into it. ISO is the final factor in the exposure triangle. And when you're reading camera reviews online, this is often the most talked about aspect of any new camera body. We talk about how aperture controls the amount of light that comes into your camera, how shutter speed controls how long that light exposes your sensor for, and now ISO determines how sensitive your camera's sensor is to the light that it receives. ISO is counted on a much less confusing scale than aperture. ISO 100, ISO 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 6400. It just doubles because it's doubling how sensitive the sensor is to light. The more available light, like being outside on a sunny day, the less sensitive you need your camera sensor to be. You could use ISO 100 or 200. The less available the light, like being inside or being outside during dusk, the more sensitive you need your camera sensor to be, like ISO 1600 or even 3200. This all sounds great, right? Okay, so the less available the light, the higher I need my ISO. I get it. Let's move on. Well, hold on, because for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. When you raise your ISO, your camera becomes more sensitive to the light that it receives because it's boosting the electrical signal to the sensor. I know, another confusing one. But listen, all that mumbo jumbo means is that the higher you raise your ISO, the more digital noise you add to your photos. And oftentimes, digital noise isn't too pretty. Here is the exact same photo taken at ISO 100, 400, 1600, 6400. Now let's go in for a 100% crop. This is ISO 100. As you can see, nice and clean. Now ISO 6400, very noisy and grainy. Side by side? Now if you read any sort of camera reviews online and you check out the comment section, I guarantee you that there will be no less than 10 million comments about how horrible the ISO performance is of any given camera. Cool. And technically they're right in all of their arguments. But in practice, none of that matters. Alright, let's say that it's wedding day. You walk inside after taking photos outside, and the bride sees her grandmother for the first time in years. The bride runs over to her grandma and gives her a nice long hug. Would you raise your ISO or slow down your shutter speed to get a good photo? Remember, keeping a low ISO will keep your photo free of any digital noise. I hope that you said that you would raise your ISO. Listen, your clients will always choose a grainy photo over a blurry photo. If you lowered your shutter speed to let more light in to get a proper exposure, you might be shooting at only 1/15th of a second or 1/30th of a second. Your photos might have a lot of blur and you would have no idea who the bride was even hugging. Plus, every year that technology gets better, ISO performance kind of becomes a thing of the past. Because cameras are just that good now. So that is it for the exposure triangle. Join me tomorrow for one of the most helpful and yet at the same time probably most useless lesson. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. I promise. I'll see you then.